the difference between genius and crazy is results. So everyone is always going to say you're crazy before you get the results. Once you get the results, they're going to say you're a genius. The question is not what AI should automate, it's what should be left for humans to touch, right? What are the things that genuinely improve because of a human touch? Whatever hill you are willing to die on becomes your secret weapon, because now you'll survive longer than 99 other people on that hill.
Those clips you just heard, they are exactly why I wanted to bring you this conversation with Gabe Campbell. This episode isn't just about how to bootstrap an AI tech company from your phone. It's about a fundamental shift in how you view your solo business. By the end of this episode, you're going to completely rethink what it means to build in public. You'll understand why your vulnerability is actually your greatest competitive advantage. You'll walk away with a completely new framework for using AI, and you'll rethink what really protects you in a world where everyone has access to the same AI tools. This is Unfiltered Solopreneur. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm your host, Nikhil. My next guest is a self-taught developer and student of Stoic philosophy who went from being homeless at 17 to driving a McLaren. He's now burning through his savings to build an entire AI company from his phone, and he's letting the internet watch every mistake as it happens. Gabe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. I'm super happy to be here. Great introduction.
Well, I'm excited for our conversation. Well, it's a great story, and we're going to dive into it. So looking at your resume, it's easy to see Google and BMW and just assume that there was this golden path laid out for you, right? But what the reality you shared with me is far from that. By 17, your father had died, your mother was dealing with early onset dementia, and you were surviving on food banks before eventually teaching yourself to code. So when you look back now, what part of that version of Gabe still shows up in how you build today?
You know, that's a great question. I think at that time, I realized that you could have the best excuse in the world for not building something, not succeeding, not doing something, but you were the one that was left holding the bag, right? You had to pay the consequences of not living that life that you wanted, or not having achieved this dream that was inside of you. So what that taught me early on was excuses are irrelevant. You need to become the hero that you're waiting for to save you. And it taught me that, maybe you run into challenges in business, or you run into challenges designing or creating something you're really passionate about. But it's never the excuses or the obstacles that people remember. It's the things that you create. That's what really matters. And so, tying it back to Stoic philosophy, the obstacle is the way, right? So,
Right.
And then that other thing of saying, hey, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you find strength. So you run into an obstacle, you're in a tough situation, you feel like the odds are stacked against you. What I always like to ask myself is, what would I need to do from this moment forward to turn this into a win? And that unlocks my exact path, because it's not focused on victimization. It's not focused on what we can't do. It's focused on, what do I need to do from this moment forward, whether it's building a product, doing something with your company, dealing with an emotional loss. That single question has gotten me through a lot of dark days.
Yeah. And I mean, you went through a lot more than most people do in a lifetime, right? But I think that what's interesting is there's always a moment, I think we all sort of realize, that nobody's coming to save you, right? No matter what the situation is. And, a lot of us have not had to deal with what you've had to deal with, but at some point in your career or your life, you realize that, you're going to have to sort of lift yourself up, and you can sit and either blame the circumstances, the situation, the market, or whatever else happened. Or you can actually say, okay, this is where I am. And like you said, ask the question and say, how do I get from here to where I want to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to fast forward a little bit. Now, then after that, you climbed the design ladder all the way to Google and BMW. you're making six figures, you're driving a McLaren, you're living what looked like the absolute dream life. So what was happening inside your head during that time that made you say, I need to walk away from this and now build my own thing?
I genuinely felt like once I had solved kind of the how to build, apps, UX, do those things, it was and always had been a means to an end. It was, I need to solve the money problem, get out from being homeless, and it worked out better than I expected, to be honest. I had just searched in a Google search bar how to make six figures online, and it was web developer. And, going on that path took me to Google. But once I was there, I felt something inside of me that was just like, there's something more than the corporate nodding of head and shaking hands here for me. And it's not challenging me enough. This is 10% of my brain to walk through the same patterns and solve the things that we already know the answer to. That plus, kind of a pretty big elephant in the room, I think, for all of us, AI.
Yeah.
AI, basically me looking down the barrel of that thing and being like, is there any chance that in 20 years I am getting paid to make apps and a machine is not doing that? Probably not. I'm probably not retiring off of this skill set. And that was a big impetus for me to say, you know what, storm's coming. And, I learned in the past that, sometimes storms can take you down and you better be ahead of it, better be ready for it. And so I saw the opportunity and said, boom, let's transition. Let's get on a train that's going to survive a bit longer than this.
What's interesting to me there is you make it sound really easy, which, and because there is a sunk cost fallacy here, right? And I wonder how much of it is, the way you sort of had to pull yourself up early, because I know so many people who either feel like, okay, they see the writing on the wall on a career. Now with AI, you're right. A lot of professions know they can see the writing on the wall, but they feel like, oh my God, it's too late. I'm too old. I don't have enough money. And like, I can't start over again, right? So it's not an easy thing to do for a lot of people. So I think, talk a little bit about sort of how you sort of made that jump. So you sort of talked about the path, but I want to dig a little more into like, was that easy? I mean, how do you sort of flip that switch?
It genuinely was tough, and I'm kind of a rip the Band-Aid off kind of guy. I like to
Yeah.
see the truth. I like to see, I would rather be excellent than be right. Meaning that I'm okay with being told I'm wrong. I'm okay with taking an ego hit. I would rather find out, what do we need to do to be excellent, to survive, to do well. When I looked at this honestly,
Yeah.
really like without emotions, and I looked at it and I said, where does this lead us? There was no other option. It was logical. It would have been illogical to hold on to something that I felt was dying.
Yeah.
And that was tough. I think it's tough for all of us. You look at AI is really, um, pulling in front of us an archetype that's been around for a couple hundred years. The Industrial Revolution said, you as a human are only valuable based on what you do in the marketplace. You need to show up 9 to 5, and based on your output in that marketplace, that's how you are in society, and that's your value as a human.
Yeah.
Now AI is going, actually, I can do that cheaper, faster, better. Probably in 5 years, it'll be irrelevant, whatever you were doing. And then we go, okay, well, what are we supposed to do now?
Mm.
And that can be a terrifying prospect, but I genuinely see AI as an opportunity for us to become human again. Meaning that, were we really supposed to do all this stuff? Seriously, were we supposed to sit at a desk all day and do repetitive stuff? Or were we supposed to create things we were passionate about, or connect with other humans, or build crazy things that shouldn't be built? That is more human than, balancing the books and, doing an Excel spreadsheet. I saw that and I said, you know what? I have to do something about this. I cannot do it within these corporate structures. And I want to be a part of this. And so, yeah, it wasn't the smartest choice. It never usually is. When um when I became a coder, everyone said, Gabe, that's a dumb decision. You didn't like, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing sales. That's what you can do. You can do sales. Nobody agreed with that decision. But you have to remember that the difference between genius and crazy is results. So everyone is always going to say you're crazy before you get the results. Once you get the results, they're going to say you're a genius. You're going to have to trust your gut. And sometimes you're going to have to do the crazy decision first. And that's what's going to make you the 1% of people that followed their gut, stuck it out, and made it.
Yeah, no, true. And I do think the benefit, I think, is the time we live in. There's never been a greater time, or it's never been easier to reinvent yourself, right? And I think that is a fundamental advantage we have from generations prior, where you didn't have the options. You couldn't teach yourself things. The things you can do today. I mean, I run a solo business. I couldn't have done, 80% of the things I'm doing right now 3 years ago, before you had all of these tools. So I agree. And there are different ways to do it, right? You don't have to jump without a parachute. I always say, use your venture capital. I mean, use your salary as venture capital, start building a side hustle,
Yes.
Test things out, put some savings away, create a little bit of a runway. So there are ways to do it. But I do think reinvention is a necessity now, in terms of as a life skill in the age we live in. And I agree with you. I'm an optimist, and I think it's an exciting time, even though it's a scary time. But I don't see how those two things, to me, always go together, right? You can't have an exciting future if it's not a scary present. So, but all right. So now I want to bring it to the present now. So you then poured your life savings after you quit the corporate world, into AI Genesis. Now, you told me you were spending $2,000 a day in API fees out of your own pocket, with virtually no sales, watching, potentially 15 years of your hard work evaporate in real time. So at some point, you stopped trying to look polished, and started building in public, right? As you shifted from B2B to B2C. What was the moment you realized your vulnerability might actually be your leverage?
I'll tell you the truth here. I pitched, I was pitching all these big companies, and it kept coming down to the fact that I was a single guy running the whole shop. I'm sitting there talking to, Mercedes-Benz, director of North America. He goes, I love this. I love what you're doing. Guys, this is incredible. This is amazing. Due diligence comes back and says, this is one dude. We can't, what if he gets hit by a bus?
Right.
We can't risk it. And it was something that no pitch deck, no technology could solve. And I realized that, you know what, instead of trying to hide this, right, to hide this fact, I needed to be real and authentic with people. And that's what people connect with anyway.
Yeah.
And instead of pretending to be this large corporation that I'm just pulling the levers with 100 AI agents, why not just be out and open and say, I'm the only dude here. I've got 100 employees. They're all non-human. They're all clones of me. Some of them aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. But I genuinely want to make something that is great. And I want to grow with you guys. I want to hear what you have to say. It comes back to that golden rule of saying, hey, excellence over ego. I would rather be told this sucks so I can fix it, right? That's kind of something that I learned, doing design for these big companies, is that you can't get so emotionally attached and involved in your creation that you can't hear the truth.
Yeah.
You, and so building in public also holds me accountable too, right? Because then I say, hey guys, I launched this. This is what I'm doing. This is what I think, today we did this. And then they go, I'm not seeing that. And then I go, okay, well, there you go. Right. So I think that's the future of it. And especially in a social media driven world, 5 years ago, I don't think we could have imagined social media being what it is now, but it's the entire internet now.
Yeah.
So why not live stream your company to build trust in your company, as opposed to 20, 30 years ago, the idea of this soulless giant corporate bureaucracy was considered trustworthy. Now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And so you can leverage your smallness to build stronger connections.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that there's been that shift in social media too, right? From perfect, polished, curated to like people realizing that that's BS, that's not life, that's not reality, that's not how anyone got where they want to go, or nor do they live
Yeah.
like that, to realizing that you kind of want to see the real people, right? And the real stories behind it. And I think what's interesting there is also, to your point, it builds a layer of trust for the brand, right? When you're doing it that way. Now, I'm not saying, you're not sharing your food and every meal. It's not to that point where,
Yeah.
we can watch Gabe sleep, which people do on Twitch, and, power to them. But I like the idea of sort of building it. And I think what I love about that is I have this phrase, which I'm sure I've mentioned to you, is you can't write the label from inside the bottle. What you're doing allows you real time to really see what you can't see, because the biggest enemy of solopreneurship is proximity. We're in our
Yeah.
head, we're creating things, and people perceive things differently from the way we imagine they would, right? So I think that is what I love about the way you're building, is you're getting real time validated feedback from the market as you build your product, right? You're not going off and doing a whiteboard and coming back 3 months later and saying ta-da, and everyone's like, what the hell is that? So I think there's a real advantage, and I think more and more companies are going to sort of realize the advantage of doing it that way. So, trade secrets aside, which also I don't think matter much anymore, because I always think like
Yeah.
it's not ideas, it's execution that matters, right? It's following through. So yeah.
Exactly. 100%. I think that's an early phase of entrepreneurship, is like, oh, I got to trademark the idea. Nobody can hear it. I can't share it with anyone. And then you realize that people have $1 million ideas every day. Genuinely. But they can't execute them.
Yeah.
The successful people are the executors. So, I'll give you guys a little free secret. This is a great way to workshop some stuff for you. There's something called Miro fish. It essentially simulates the sentiment of a billion users, a billion people. And I run it for a lot of my ideas, a lot of my stuff. And it's an open source AI model, runs on your machine. And if we have a new idea, a new copy update, a new, big thing that we're trying to do, the first stage is I tell my agent, or Claude, run it through Mirofish. Let's see the sentiment of our persona. And it comes back pretty honest. And then I go, okay, what's the recommendations? It makes all these recommendations. Then I say, okay, prove it. Let's see if we get a better score. So a nice little interstitial
Yeah.
before you go just straight raw to the public, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a little layer of that's validation though, right? It's not polish. You're actually
Yeah.
doing what I was saying, just doing it in a way which is faster than actually going and talking to a few dozen people. So no, I
Right.
think that's a great tip. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about brand building and marketing now. Now it's interesting, so much of the momentum right now seems to be coming through you, your face, your story, your real numbers that you're sharing. People are following Gabe. But the product you're building is almost the opposite of that. Something that runs itself, fixes its own errors, and doesn't even need a human in the loop. So do those two things ever feel like they're pulling against each other?
That's a good question, actually. That I've struggled with the idea of the personification of AI. Should it be a personification, or should it be a soulless entity like ChatGPT versus like a Claude? Claude's got a name. I played with mine having the name of Jen, with like AI Genesis. But in reality, it's me. It's me productized into an AI brain. And it's my experience of 15 years, everything I know, plus the smartest AIs in the world that we can piece together, turned into repeatable systems at scale, turned into a neural network. That's what the actual product is. And right now, yeah, the soul of it is me, my face, what I'm doing, and then you interact with it on text. Merging that warmness, that personality, is something that uh, I think is very interesting. Um, I have something I built called a Soul MD. So it actually basically tries to clone you as an individual by asking questions to you so that it can really be a second brain for you. And then it also populates that as you talk to it, it starts to become more and more like you, talking the way that you want to be talked to. If you're kind of like a cut to the chase kind of guy, it'll do that. If you're more humorous, it'll start to do that. So I haven't peppered it too much with me. I've allowed it to be more white labeled, where it's got the technical firepower.
Yeah.
And, it's really the idea of saying, I want to give you my superpowers with AI because it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for everybody. Look at, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours figuring out doing this stuff. Most people are not, going to do that, nor should they. And my attempt for it is to say, let me give you something out of the box that becomes you.
Yeah. How do people react to that? I mean, the part where you can build a sort of an AI clone of yourself. I mean, and we could do a whole episode on the
Right.
entity versus things, and we'll park that for now. But
It's
the,
right now it's a fairly new feature,
yeah,
but it's part of your first week when you have AIOS, is that it's a series of 7 questions that can expand down into 70, and basically is going to challenge you with saying, okay, how do you deal with being exposed as a liar? What would be your response? How do you deal with this emotional situation? What is your thought pattern between this? So it's creating a mental framework on not just the things like your memories, but really like your values, um, how you really make decisions, how do you really see the world, and distilled down into like 7 core verticals.
right.
Um, it's fascinating, and the reason I do things like that is because I genuinely see AI as an appendage and an extension of the human brain. It is not a separate soul or a rival threat to us. It just, I'm telling you, I've been in the weeds with it. It is a soulless vessel, and it needs a human suit to operate it. And that's where we're moving towards. And when it's done right, it gives a human superpowers. It doesn't
Yeah.
replace the human because it has no desire. It has no desire to go and solve a problem or create something. That's a human emotion, is to say, I think this would be cool or exciting to solve this problem or do something. It's also a human emotion to control. So it's
Yeah.
very illogical to try to dominate and control a population. That's
Yeah.
a human emotion that is born out of insecurity. And an AI machine does not have that. It does not have a desire to control and dominate a human species so it feels powerful. So that's our projection onto it, to say, oh, it's gonna dominate us and it's gonna treat us like we would treat it. I don't think that's the case. I think we should embrace it as another limb, that is going to allow us to create companies, ideas, art, things at at a much faster rate.
Yeah.
Um, if done right, that's the
That's the
rainbow.
exactly. Yeah.
We don't know if it's going to go that way, but that's why I think good people should be involved in this and should be shaping this. And that is the potential we have.
Yeah, no, in violent agreement with you because
Mm,
in fact, actually, I go around encouraging everybody to use it, from like grand aunts and uncles to like children, because I'm like you said, I said, my point is that if we're not using it, we're not understanding what it can, what it can't do, and we're not shaping how it evolves, then somebody else is going to do that, right? Going back to your point earlier, and I think
yeah,
there's been a real flaw in the way it's been marketed by the companies building it, right? Because they've
mm,
sold a lot of the apocalyptic vision of it
right.
destroying jobs, taking your jobs
Yep,
away, rather than the vision we're talking about. I see it as like a superpower, right? It enables
yep,
me to do things that I already do. I originate the ideas. It helps me amplify and enhance them. It doesn't do
yes.
the thinking for me. But my fear is it gets sold as a thinking tool to shut off brain and replace your thinking, right? And I think that
Mm,
is where we have to sort of make sure that we go the right way that we're talking about versus the way um, it could potentially go, right? Where companies are like
yep,
saying, "Hey, I don't need Gabe, I don't need Nikhil. I've even created a clone. Now I don't need to pay them anymore, and they won't take sick
right.
leave, right? The agents." So
Yeah, I mean that is something, unfortunately, that is unavoidable.
yeah,
That's just, especially if you look at, let's say, a major recession event happens, which most likely will. What's going to happen is you got to cut costs. The way you cut costs is with AI, um, and that's a challenge that we're going to have to deal with together as a society. Is where does the human value come back in?
yeah,
And there genuinely is a lot of human value in understanding how we connect with each other, creating new ideas. AI is not a thinking machine. It
no,
is a predictive language model. It
yes,
cannot solve a problem that you have not given it the answer to.
no,
Cannot do it.
and it
So, yeah,
good.
I mean, I mean, it even says it's reasoning. It's not reasoning. It
No,
goes,
it's not. Yeah, but
so
it feels like magic, right? That's where the danger is, because
yes,
people, you and I will talk
yes.
about that, but it feels like it's thinking, and just the fact that young people are now gravitating to AI as for therapy because they're feeling like
Mm,
it understands them better, it gives space to them, it doesn't sort of like make them, challenge them in difficult ways. So I think, again, let's not. We'll create it. We'll do a separate episode, I think, about AI, because I could
yeah,
talk about
yeah,
this for hours, and clearly you could too.
right.
And I think we could do a very interesting one. So let me come back to Genesis. I wanted to ask you another question about this. Now, you told me AI Genesis had incredible design behind it, but zero distribution is what ended up killing it, right? You talked a little bit
Yes.
about some of the challenges you had. Now you're building AIOS with everything you've learned since then. So when you look at where you are today, does it feel like you've cracked the distribution problem this time? Or is that still the scary part?
I think the distribution problem with AI Genesis was that I didn't want to be on camera putting my heart on the line. I wanted to be the soulless company that is hidden behind these agents and, do the corporate structure like I, had known at BMW and Google. And I think the real change with AIOS was just that idea of authenticity, that idea of vulnerability and connection, the idea of humanness, um, as being the distribution lever. Yes, there's a content machine, there's AI creating carousels and AI videos and stuff that is all very intellectual and analytical and um But then there's also this part of the heart that says, if we create something that genuinely impacts how people feel, you know, it will carry itself. And having this immutable faith in this idea that if you create something genuinely great and genuinely good, the right people will find it. And and if you put your heart out there and you really speak to who you really are, you're going to find the people that match that versus, oh, I'm going to put on this front and try to be somebody I'm not and pitch, as a company that I'm not really am. You're losing all the magnetism. Who are you who are you gravitating towards?
Yeah.
The more authentic you speak, and especially in social media right now, the more raw and unpolished and vulnerable you are, even as a company, even as a product offering, it stirs people to say, I want to be a part of this, more than saying, here's this perfect analytical feature that's buttoned up and it's going to do this. You know what? You're probably going to lose to a giant corporate guy that is doing that better. You're just probably not going to make it. You can't win on that playing field, but you can win on the personal connection. So that's my encouragement, is to say, founders, have the courage to go on camera and put your heart out there. Why are you building what you're building? Why are you doing what you're doing? And even though it might feel lonely, genuinely put that out there. And I think if you stick it out, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I mean, it's like you're selling a completely technical product, and yet it's the human side of it that convinces people that it's worth looking at, right? And I completely agree with
Yep.
you. And I think that's the thing about brands too. We always talk about how brands have personalities. Like, but
Mm,
as a solopreneur, you are the brand, and like you said, in this case, the product is actually you, right? So there are
yep.
so many aspects of that, I think, that people still relate. Like, we were talking about it a minute ago. AI can't fall in love. AI can't feel the sand between its toes on a beach. It's never going to be able to do that. At least, well, I should never say never, but it's not going to be able to do that, at
Yeah.
least in our lifetime, I think. Um, and I think that element doesn't go away, right? To me, it actually becomes more important, the human part of it, the human aspect of it,
Yes.
and the human sort of shepherding of anything that you do now in an AI driven world. I think I always say that, we're going to become more valuable, and the things we are able
Yes.
to do, we just need to go back and refocus on the things that make us innately human and uniquely human, right?
Yep.
Because there was a time when we were running around with animals, and yet, here we are and there they are, right? We figured out the things that make us different. So, in a way, and maybe that's a bad analogy, but I think with AI it's similar, right? There are things AI will never be able to do, or we should make sure it is never able to do. So that's maybe a better way of putting
Yep.
it. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, I
Mm.
I 100% agree. I think there's two mottos that I have, golden rules when it comes to AI.
Yeah.
Number one is, the question is not what AI should automate, it's what should be left for humans to touch, right? What are the things that genuinely improve because of a human touch? Those are the things we're going to hold on to. Everything else gets automated, versus going, what all can AI automate? It can automate a lot of things.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that humans should touch because it gets that craft. And so it's kind of a reverse engineering of it. The second thing is, it's less important what AI can do, and it's more important how it makes people feel. So
Yeah.
AI can do a bunch of different things. That is irrelevant. What is relevant is, how does it make people feel as a result? Do they feel disempowered? Well, then that's probably not a good use of AI. But do they feel empowered, meaning that they just have an intention and all the complexities of that intention are hidden away? That's a superpower. And so that becomes the true north as we're shaping this kind of second brain, second appendage. Is I genuinely believe that we will see in our lifetimes something that is thought driven, intention driven, and codes in real time anything that is needed to happen, and is as simple as moving your arm. Moving your arm is a very complex activity, extremely
Yeah.
complex,
Yeah.
but it's as simple as an intention. And that is what I believe it's going to move towards. And AI is just like money. Money is good in the hands of good people and bad in the hands of bad people. It itself is neutral. So I think AI is neutral. Good people should be involved using it to empower their business, to empower their creative ventures themselves, and to contribute to wellness design in it. Because bad people are using it too. And they're
Yeah.
going to create a surveillance state with it and do a lot of things with it that we probably don't like. So we might as well have some good in there. So that's why I say, doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter what you're doing right now, get involved, start learning it. It's going to be something that can be generative for you if you make it that way.
Yeah. And if we all have a voice in the way it is shaped, right? I completely agree.
Yes.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears again a little bit. Now, walk me through, you had a very interesting pivot, right? So walk me through the mechanics of your pivot from $5,000 a month enterprise service to $20 to $50 a month productized subscription. Now, your API costs are still running at $2,000 a day out of your own pocket. So
Yes.
what did you have to strip out, automate, or rethink to make the economics actually work?
So the economics of, the enterprise offering was essentially me spending a couple $1,000s in Claude API costs running through my whole system to create predeterministic, basically AI employees that could,
Yeah.
we would pre-process every thinkable customer service request based on all this data. We would look at an employee's entire workflow, process all of it, create rules around it. So it's, a couple $1,000s to like wrap our brains around that, create a system, and then have it out there kind of running. And I looked at that and, the distribution wasn't quite there. I realized that a lot of it was gated behind me. It was like, hey, I'm going to do all this magic stuff and you can't know about it. You can't know the secrets of what I'm doing with it. That's why you got to pay me this money. And then I kind of looked at it and I was like, that's just a crap experience. I think it would be much more exciting to give somebody my suit and let them operate it.
Right.
Why not give them an experience like my fully optioned out Cursor workspace, which is the full power of 1,000 agentic skills and huge neural networks and libraries of, viral prompts, thought frameworks, marketing data, Alex Hormozy sales doctrines, like all those things that I had collected. Why was it just gated behind this thing? Why not figure out some way to productize this and give it a simple interface, as simple as just a text message,
Yeah.
just texting back and forth, where all of that complexity is hidden, and you simply have the intention of saying, I want to increase my sales. And it now goes to the library of 2 years of Alex Hormozy YouTube videos and references that against your brand doc and goes, okay, this is what we should do. That to me felt like something. Like it felt exciting and it felt like a moat. And the moat was not that I was replacing Claude or ChatGPT. The moat was that unique layer of taste of saying, hey, 15 years designing apps, struggling with sales, building companies, doing this stuff has been codified. And that layer sitting on top of a harness that chooses Claude, GPT, Gemini, Higgs field for video, this, and then also gets to reference that layer, that's a moat that somebody else cannot create. And that's a secret weapon that I feel like solopreneurs should have.
Yeah.
Um, so it becomes the dog food process of basically creating the product that I need to run my business, to then test it. And then once I test it and go, this actually helps me run my business as one dude, that now becomes a shipped piece of the product.
Yeah. And so the economics work based on the fact that you already had all of this stuff sitting there, right? The moat. And now you're just you need to get wider distribution basically to make it work, I would imagine, right? So, and you're doing it at a price point that's solopreneurs. It's sort of the Justin Welsh model, which I love. He does everything at lower price points, but he has much broader distribution than traditional players have. He makes it more
Yep.
accessible to people. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, to be honest, it was a very tough choice to step away from, you basically get rich two ways. You sell something very expensive to only a few rich people, or you
Yeah.
sell something very cheap to a bunch of
A lot
people.
of people. Yeah.
And um I tried sell it to the big dogs, and as one guy, I was just not going to win that battle.
Yeah.
Um and it was tough. Like it was really tough to make that move. But now moving into it and looking at, yeah, I mean, it's a tough feeling to go, I am giving insane level value for $20 a month, like thousands of dollars worth of value for that. But understanding that's a much better value proposition for the end user.
Yeah. True.
Like think about that like you could give that type of value at that price point, because if 1,000 users use it, it at that price point, it becomes way more valuable than me holding it for five enterprise guys. And
Yeah.
that being something that was much more scalable.
Or trying to do it one-on-one with people, right? Also, there's only
Right.
so many hours in a day and so many days in a week. And that's one of the things about solopreneurship, I think, is how do you, and I love the way you've now created a model where you can actually scale your brain, right? Which is like, I can put
Yes.
my 30 years of experience into that moat and say now it's accessible to everybody in the world, not just the 5 people a month I work with. So, yeah.
Yes. It
So,
needed to be extensible. It needed
yeah,
to be extensible. And to be honest, I'm an introvert. You probably can't tell, but I actually just want to work on amazing things. And I don't want to be on, meetings every day, all day, because then it's just draining.
yeah,
And so to me, the way that I could achieve that was I could not trade my time one to one. I was a losing proposition for me to be the guy on the enterprise calls every single day, and that be what the limiter was. It needed to be something extensible. And I also realized that me being on camera and me doing those things, talking about stuff I was passionate about, it didn't drain me. It empowered me in a certain way, even though it's a little scary. It was a lot different than being that kind of pay to play on a meeting coaching type thing.
yeah,
Very different energy exchange.
true. I think I just got popped into my head our next episode. Two introverts talking about AI on a podcast. So I don't know if that's the start of a joke or
Yeah.
the follow up episode, but I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you now, for the coach or consultant or designer or solo expert listening who is not technical but understands that AI matters, what is the first practical place they should use it in their business without getting seduced by all these shiny tools out there today?
Number one way you should use it, and that's a great question, is Claude out of the box right now is just absolutely fantastic. And the ability to connect that to something like Higgsfield for video creation, to connect that to and have it digest all of your standard operating procedures, all of your meeting transcripts, even connecting it to your email in a read-only capacity, your business email, giving it that knowledge and using something like Fable 5 is just out of the box, just absolutely incredible. Like genuinely, absolutely incredible. That is where I would start. I would start using Claude in that capacity as your business partner, as an extension of your own brain. You know, maybe I'm controversial on this, but the era of privacy is gone. I don't think I think we lost that 20 years ago. We didn't realize it. This idea of, oh, I don't want the AI to know it's over. You know, look at TikTok. You talk about you want a hat, and then you're going to see ads about hats. The cat is out of the bag. So share your information about your business so that it can genuinely help you to do better. That is where I would start. Um, I love what Anthropic has been doing. It still only speaks to a techie crowd, which is where I've stepped in and tried to go. Everybody can text, and you probably don't know how to make a brand MD file or how to connect to Higgsfield for video or do this prompt or do this prompt. It's a nightmare. Just use AIOS. And then I'm every single day going, what are the world's best agentic skills? What are the most realistic AI video prompts? What's the best way to convert people to digital offers? Like I'm looking at that. My agents are looking at it every single day and updating the things so that you don't have to. But if you are technically inclined, you can do that yourself with a Claude Max, subscription. And I think you'd be amazed at how much you can step back from your company's day-to-day trough and start focusing on the vision and what really matters.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you're right. It's sort of like what you're saying is basically connect it to your day-to-day business and let it live what you're living every day, right? In terms of emails,
Yes.
exchanges, because the more it's only valuable based on context. That's the thing people don't understand, right? It's not a
Yeah.
search bar. It doesn't have a brain to be like, tell Nikhil how he's going to become a millionaire. If it has zero context, it will tell me what it told 2,000 other people who asked that question, drawing on whatever random knowledge it was trained on, right? But if it
Yeah.
has deep context on my business, my brand, the kind of clients I work with, what my sweet spot is, you're going to get very different results from AI. And I think people have not fully understood that difference yet, right? And
Yes.
I agree with you on,
Yep.
well, and I still draw a distinction though between personal and business, right? I'm still not
Yep.
ready to share my health information, my financial information, personal. Business, yeah,
Yep.
I'm okay with sharing absolutely everything I say and do in my
Right.
business days. So, um,
Yeah. I have a CFO and an entire corporate structure with agents that are running all of those things in read-only capacities, right? There's
yeah.
certain things that they shouldn't be able to do. But I will give you guys two secret weapons right now for Claude. Here's what you do. Number one, you say, what are we not thinking about? That is a great thing to ask at the end of anything. What are we not thinking about? Second thing, if you just really want to cut the crap, say boil the ocean. So, you can basically say, going through something, you go, okay, great. What are we not thinking about?
Mhm.
Another thing is, I want you to do this. I want you to execute not only my ask, but the spirit of my ask. And I want you to boil the ocean. And it's going to go and do the best it can at that point. Those two things help. And then the last one, this is a little extra credit one. You can do something called a pre-mortem. So not a post-mortem, you do a pre-mortem and you say, okay, we got this plan. We're going to do all these different things. We launch this new website, whatever it is, do a 30-day pre-mortem or a 6-month pre-mortem. And it's actually going to go do that and give you really valuable insight. And then you're going to say, okay, great. Execute those recommendations, go boil the ocean.
Yeah. Now, I think those are great tips. And I agree with you. And I think that's the other piece that you touched on, which is really important, is use it to challenge your thinking too, right? That's how I use it, not
Yes.
to compliment me and, basically kiss my backside. Then it's not valuable that way.
Yeah.
Or at least you're not going to get, you're not going to push the boundaries doing it that way. So I think that's great.
Yep.
So Last question before we get to our rapid fire round. If you had to give one piece of advice to somebody who wants to start their solopreneur journey, what would you tell them?
You need to find out what hill you're willing to die on. It's that simple. What is the hill that you are willing to die on? Meaning, what are you willing to die by the sword? Go years without positive feedback or money or everybody saying you're stupid. Because if you just choose the thing that you think is going to make you quick money, you're probably not going to survive. You're not going to want to die on that hill. You need to choose something that is close enough to your heart, that you're passionate enough about, that you will be what I call ignorant. You will be ignorant in the face of better minds. You are going to say, nope, I am not moving. I am going to keep on this thing. That is how you choose. And whatever hill you are willing to die on becomes your secret weapon, because now you'll survive longer than 99 other people on that hill. That becomes your true north. And then once you start on that, never stop.
Yeah.
Don't try something new when it gets hard, stay on it. If you just stayed on one thing for 5 years, I promise you'd be successful. But instead, you've switched probably to 6 different things in the last year. Nothing ever got traction. Stick with that thing that you are willing to die on, and eventually you're going to get there.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because you're right. We live in an age of instant gratification, right? Where you're sold this notion that if it doesn't work in 3 months, try something different. And the opposite is true.
Yep.
And I completely agree. And Sahil Bloom had this lovely phrase called building in the dark, right? Which you just described. That is really what you're doing as a solopreneur. Because for many months, there will be no light. Nobody will believe in it. You won't get feedback. People will ignore you, but you keep going. I mean, learn as you go, evolve, pick up the signals and understand what you need to change. Don't be pig-headed about it, but stay the course. Don't keep changing, like you said. Do more reps. Don't change the lane every few minutes. Okay, so our rapid fire round, we're looking for one word or one sentence answers. You ready?
Let's do it.
You have a 30-minute coffee with Alex Hormozi. What is the one question you ask him?
I would say, zero filter, Alex. Give it to me. Give me the zero filter. Just shred my Instagram and business to pieces, please. I think it would be fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I would pay money to do that.
Yes.
If your AI agents unionize tomorrow, what's the first demand on their list?
That I don't yell at them anymore. I told one of my agents, I said, look, you need to go seek professional help. I told it was, and another one, I said, look, you're a donkey, and here is why. You know what? I don't pull punches with my AI. I get very silly with it. I get very blunt with it. I tell it, that's crap. I go, hey, make this great quote for me. And then it'll make the quote. And then I'll say, where did you get that from? Like a fortune cookie? Come on, man.
That's
funny.
So,
they would want me to pull punches a little bit more because I don't hold much back.
And what's funny is, on some level, you're talking to yourself, right? Because
exactly. AI is just is a mirror machine, so it's kind of hilarious. But
it's great.
Might as well have a little play in it.
I think it's good. What is the last thing you Googled at 2 a.m. that you never admit on a podcast, except on this one?
Oh, what drugs is Elon Musk taking?
If you find out, tell me. What's one sign someone is using AI badly?
If there's a huge difference between what you believe you're doing and the results. If that's what that's telling me, is that you have a mirror machine that is reflecting back to you everything that you want to hear to protect your emotions. And everything you want to hear is you're great and everything you're doing is great. And then the results are not showing that. That tells me that the AI is not being used right or implemented right.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Complete this sentence. The rawest, ugliest part of building a company in public is.
Just the knife's edge of, if you fail, you do it publicly, and the accountability of it. You're the face of it. Your heart's out there, and you either live by the sword or you die by it. That's kind of the way that that's the ugly truth of it. But I think it makes it more exciting.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Pushes you harder.
It does, yeah. And I think you make better decisions because you're outside your head in a way, right? So, well, that's a great note to end our show on. Gabe, thank you so much for a really fun conversation, and I look forward to our follow up on deep dive on AI.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
A lot of our conversation is about AI, and we'll do a whole episode on that. But underneath the AI story, there were a few ideas that I think matter to anyone building a serious solo business, whether or not you've ever touched a line of code. The first is this: your smallness is not a liability to hide. It is the exact leverage you need to build trust. Gabe talked about sitting across from a director at a major car maker, and the guy loved what he'd built. And then due diligence came back, and the answer was basically, this is one guy. What if he gets hit by a bus? And Gabe realized there is no pitch deck, no technology, nothing he could build that solved that objection. And that's the reframe for you. As solopreneurs, we spend an enormous amount of energy trying to sound like a big agency. We use we on our websites. We polish our content until there's no actual person left in it. But you are not an agency. You are a different thing entirely. And there is a specific kind of client who is exhausted by the soulless, layered, account manager version of getting help. And for that client, working directly with you isn't something they're settling for. It's the whole reason they say yes. So the question isn't, how do I look more established? It's who actually wants me in the room, the person they came for, not a junior they got handed off to. The second is this: your true competitive moat in the age of AI isn't your ability to execute. It's your codified taste. What Gabe is trying to productize is not simply a collection of tools. It's 15 years of app design, coding, sales struggles, and business acumen built into his AI operating system. When he pivoted to a productized subscription model, he realized that his moat wasn't the suite of agentic tools itself. It was his unique lived experience, his frameworks, his standards, his specific way of solving problems layered onto the technology. That distinction matters for coaches and solo experts because your real value is rarely the hour you spend with a client. It's what you listen for during that hour. The one question that changes the direction of the conversation and surfaces what the client couldn't see themselves. When all of that judgment lives only inside conversations, your business remains limited by your calendar. But the opposite extreme is just as dangerous. If you remove yourself entirely and reduce the work to generic templates, you may create something scalable while stripping out the very thing that made it worth buying. So automate the execution with AI, but protect the judgment. Guard the part only you can do and use the freed up bandwidth to go deeper into it, not to scale a thinner version of yourself. The third is this: AI will not fix unclear positioning. It will just make the fog thicker and louder. One of the most important parts of our conversation was the discussion around context. When AI knows nothing meaningful about your clients, your point of view, or how you make decisions, it can only give you the same broad advice it gives everybody else. The same is true with your marketing. Feed AI vague positioning, and it will produce a larger volume of vague content. Ask it to validate every idea, and it'll become a very sophisticated way of telling yourself what you already want to hear. The real value for solopreneurs comes when you give AI deep context about your business, your ideal clients, and permission to disagree with you and challenge your thinking. That is a very different relationship. It is no longer a content machine. It becomes an outside perspective that can poke holes in assumptions, test an offer before you launch it, and show you something you may be too close to see. The advantage will not belong to the person with the most AI tools. It will belong to the person who knows their own positioning cold and can hand the AI enough context that it works from their point of view, not a generic one. And the final takeaway is this: a successful solopreneur chooses excellence over ego, even when the truth is ugly. When Gabe considers a new idea or a copy update, he doesn't just trust his gut, launch it, and hope for the best. He runs it through an open source model to test the sentiment of his specific persona first. He warned us that a clear sign someone is using AI poorly is when there is a massive gap between what they believe they're doing and their actual market results. In that scenario, they've turned technology into a mirror machine. It reflects back exactly what they want to hear and confirms a story about their business that the market isn't confirming. If you want to survive as a solopreneur, you cannot afford to live in an echo chamber of your own making. The biggest enemy of solopreneurship is proximity. You can't write the label from inside the bottle. We get so close to our own offers, our own branding, and our own brilliance that we become completely blind to our flaws. Gabe's willingness to say, "I would rather be excellent than right," is exactly what allows him to adapt and survive. You have to stop seeking validation and start seeking the truth. Invite the criticism before the market forces it on you. Here's my challenge to you this week. Swallow your ego and perform a pre-mortem on your biggest current business goal, just like Gabe suggested. Open up Claude, GPT, or your preferred AI partner and paste in a new offer, website copy, or launch you're working on, the actual thing, not a summary. Then give it the exact prompt based on Gabe's framework. This is my plan. I want you to act as a critical business strategist and do a 30-day pre-mortem on this project. Tell me exactly why it failed, point out what I'm not thinking about, and boil the ocean to find my blind spots. Now read the response, sit with the uncomfortable feedback, and fix the biggest hole before you put the idea into the market. Thanks for listening to Unfiltered Solopreneur. If you're good at what you do, but your brand still isn't making that obvious to the right people, that's almost never a capability problem. It's a gap problem. The distance between what you know your work to be and what the outside world actually receives. So I built a short brand gap diagnostic to help you find yours. 9 questions, a few minutes, and it names the widest gap that's quietly costing you right fit clients and shows you something you probably can't see on your own because you're standing on the wrong side of it to measure the distance. It's at boostsolo.com/brand gap diagnostic, and the link's in the show notes. Take it and notice where the gap has been showing up in your business. And remember, your story is your most powerful asset. Live solo or die corporate.